They can't get it out of their head. The things that they did, no matter how they did it, whether they were drunk or high or whatever, you gave up your man card. You need therapy.
Gooding pleading not guilty in a Manhattan court to a misdemeanor charge of forcible touching and third-degree sex abuse.
Terrence Howard was once considered one of the leading figures in Hollywood. With iconic roles like Lucius Lyon in the series Empire and memorable performances in Hustle and Flow and the first Iron Man movie, he was hailed as one of the most outstanding black actors of his generation. But today, Howard no longer appears in public as a glamorous movie star. Instead, he's shifting into something far more controversial, a man willing to speak out, to criticize the very industry he once thrived in, and to risk everything to expose what he calls the glittering illusion of entertainment. In recent months, Howard has stunned audiences with appearances on podcasts, interviews, and live streams, delivering sharp, deliberate commentary. He hasn't held back from naming names, specifically Diddy, and he hasn't hesitated to call out what he sees as the moral decay at the heart of the entertainment world. One of his most striking quotes, "When a man loses his character, there's nothing left to hold him back." Howard says he's seen this happen to many who attended Diddy's parties. People are asking, why now? Why would someone who reached such heights choose this moment to expose the industry's dark corners? According to Howard, it's not about money or fame. It's about awakening. After refusing a pay cut for Iron Man 2, Howard found himself blacklisted by the industry. Once a $1 million name, he was suddenly labeled difficult and ultimately pushed out. But in that betrayal and loss, he found clarity. Silence means complicity. From that point on, it stopped being just a personal story about Terrence Howard. His revelations tapped into a much larger wave sweeping across social media. Hashtags like #SurvivingD, #ExposeTheIndustry, and #HollywoodUnmasked began trending, signaling a growing public awakening. That shift in awareness changed the way people viewed Howard, not as a disgruntled actor clinging to faded fame, but as a whistleblower, someone willing to speak truths that many would rather ignore. Even in talk show appearances, Howard maintains a calm demeanor. But if you look into his eyes, there's no mistaking it. You can see the weight of disillusionment, the exhaustion from years of holding it in, and now, the truth is bubbling to the surface. When asked if he feared retaliation, his response cut like a knife. "I'm not afraid of them. What I'm afraid of is my kids growing up in a world where truth is buried beneath layers of glitter and lies." This isn't a performance anymore. This is Terrence, fully awake, unfiltered, and demanding that Hollywood listen, ready or not.
Gooding pleading not guilty in a Manhattan court to a misdemeanor charge of forcible touching and third-degree sex abuse.
When I viewed the video and spoke to actual eyewitnesses, it was very clear and apparent that the lady who made these false charges was stalking Mr. Gooding. This lady continued to invade his private space until ultimately somebody, not Cuba, but somebody else, had to tell her to please excuse herself.
Who could forget that unforgettable moment in 1997? Cuba Gooding Jr. standing on the Oscars stage, lifting that golden statue high into the air, shouting in pure, unfiltered joy. It was the pinnacle of his career, a rare achievement for a black actor at a time when diversity in Hollywood was still severely lacking. But the glow from that triumphant night slowly faded, replaced by a long trail of controversies no one could have seen coming. Now, with Terrence Howard dragging Cuba's name back into the spotlight, tying him to the glitzy, shadowy world allegedly surrounding Diddy, people are beginning to ask, what really happened to Cuba Gooding Jr.? According to Lil Rod, the whistleblower behind a bombshell lawsuit against Diddy, Cuba wasn't just a guest at Diddy's infamous parties. He was a regular, someone whose presence was expected. Worse, he's now accused of being involved in some of the darkest, most disturbing moments at those gatherings. Lil Rod claims that Diddy personally introduced him to Cuba aboard a private yacht, where things took a turn. What happened there, he says, crossed all acceptable boundaries and even included physical violations. As these allegations resurfaced, the public experienced a strange sense of déjà vu. This wasn't the first time Cuba had been linked to troubling behavior. Back in 2014, his wife of 20 years, Sarah Caper, filed for legal separation. Soon after, rumors began to swirl about Cuba's chaotic personal life: wild parties, infidelity, and angry outbursts. Still, it all seemed like background noise until 2019. That year, a now viral video emerged showing Cuba being arrested at a bar in New York. He was handcuffed and led away by police in front of a stunned crowd. That image, a once revered Oscar winner in cuffs, marked a turning point. His reputation, already on shaky ground, began to collapse. Since that arrest, more than 30 women have come forward with allegations of inappropriate conduct. These aren't vague stories, they're specific, detailed, and deeply unsettling. One woman claimed that during a party photo op, Cuba suddenly grabbed her behind. When she reacted, he leaned in and whispered, chillingly, "I really love you." Another said he invited her to his hotel room under the guise of friendliness, only for the situation to escalate quickly into something threatening and sexually aggressive. These incidents are no longer isolated. They form a disturbing pattern that stretches over years and involves a growing number of women. So why is it all boiling over now? Maybe because the public has finally had enough of the glamorous facade. Or maybe Terrence Howard's boldness has sparked something in others, people who've stayed silent for far too long. In recent interviews, when asked about Cuba, Terrence doesn't sidestep. He doesn't sugarcoat. He says it plainly. Some people hide their darkness behind fame, but the sun doesn't shine forever. Cuba Gooding Jr. was once the face of resilience, a man who broke through barriers and beat the odds. But if the allegations are true, his legacy won't be one of triumph. It'll be a cautionary tale, a reminder that talent doesn't excuse misconduct, and that fame isn't worth the cost of a compromised character.
You received a diamond from
I
Charles.
didn't receive a diamond, and I'm not going to speak about that. Thank you very much. And I'm not here for that.
Well, we've been told that you didn't help the prosecution sort of in this very important case.
Sorry.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Naomi Campbell has long been known not just as a legendary supermodel, but as a living icon, a symbol of fierce beauty, commanding presence, and undeniable allure. She once ruled the catwalk with a stride that couldn't be mistaken, her gaze magnetic, and every appearance left crowds entranced. But behind the glitz and glamour of her countless magazine covers, her personal life has always carried an air of mystery, sometimes shadowed by scandal. And now, with Terrence Howard suddenly dropping her name in the midst of allegations involving Diddy, the public is left wondering, what role, if any, does Naomi play in the growing web of power, secrets, and darkness that's slowly being brought to light? According to Terrence's recent comments, Naomi wasn't just another face in the crowd at Diddy's lavish and secretive parties. She was a regular, someone who showed up often and possibly witnessed more than she's ever let on. Even that vague suggestion was enough to spark a wave of speculation, especially given her long-rumored and enigmatic connection to Diddy. The two were frequently spotted together at exclusive events, vacationing in luxury getaways, and caught in intimate moments that made the public question whether their relationship was truly just friendship. But Naomi's story doesn't stop with Diddy. Back in 2010, her name made headlines around the world when she was called to testify in the war crimes trial of Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia. On the stand, Naomi admitted that she had received an uncut diamond from a stranger during a dinner hosted by Nelson Mandela. Later, she came to suspect that the gift might have been linked to Taylor and what the world would later know as blood diamonds. Her testimony, though carefully worded, raised eyebrows. There were inconsistencies, unanswered questions. And once again, Naomi found herself caught in a narrative she didn't seem to want any part of, but couldn't quite escape from unscathed either. The shadows kept following her. Her association with Harvey Weinstein, before his dramatic fall from power, was well documented. She had been seen with him at numerous events, photographed holding hands at fashion shows, mingling at post-Oscar parties. Even though she later tried to distance herself by deleting photos and dodging questions, the pattern was already clear. Naomi was consistently close to powerful men, many of whom would later be revealed as some of the industry's worst abusers. Then came the Epstein connection. Court documents revealed that Naomi had flown on Jeffrey Epstein's infamous Lolita Express, a private jet tied to horrific crimes involving sex trafficking and underage girls. When pressed by the media, Naomi denied having any deep connection to Epstein, claiming she only came into contact with him through an ex-boyfriend. But, much like before, her explanation left plenty of room for doubt. The timeline didn't quite match up. The stories didn't fully align. And once again, Naomi was being linked, however loosely, to a world of unthinkable darkness. Fast forward to today, as new accusations against Diddy continue to surface, Naomi has returned to a familiar playbook. She's wiped photos from her Instagram, unfollowed accounts, gone completely silent. It's a pattern we've seen before, from the Charles Taylor trial to Weinstein to Epstein. But this time, the silence feels heavier, less like self-protection and more like quiet withdrawal, as if she knows that any attempt at explanation may no longer hold water with the public. So, who is Naomi Campbell in all of this? Is she an outsider, caught in a storm beyond her control? A passive bystander who saw too much and said too little? Or simply someone who's been too close for too long, to too many powerful men to be completely untouched? Whatever the answer, one thing is undeniable. Her name keeps coming up. And in a world where too many famous faces claim ignorance, silence starts to look a lot like concealment.